Hello again, friends. Time for another In Other News late edition. Not because it's late in the day, it's because the news itself ain't that new. It kind of happened a while ago. But I just was reminded that it became official because of an event that's occurring here right now. What I'm referring to is that we have two new leaders of the superpower of Asia, China. Two new president and premier positions have just been taken over officially, and I say kind of just because it kind of has been happening for months. The two new dudes that I'm speaking of that will lead China likely for the next decade are Xi Jinping, president, and Li Keqiang, the premier. I'm sure I'm butchering both those names, so I'll stick with Xi and Li. President and premier, Xi and Li. It rhymes! And they're the awesome, dynamic dragon duo that will lead China forward for the next decade. They took over for a couple of oldies but goodies, a couple of Chinese favorites, Hu Jintao and Wen Jiabao. Beloved in their own right, those two guys oversaw a dynamic, exponential rise of China economically and politically in the decade that they were in power. They made no major blunders, no errors. They didn't get in any wars. They never put their foot in their mouth. They tried to be decently responsive to Chinese public needs. So they're looked upon as, hey, they were pretty good figures. And they were lucky enough to oversee China in this just absolutely unprecedented era of growth that has led them to be the superpower that they are today. But that was who and when. You know me, I always used to say, you got to know who is who and when to say when in China. And I'm going to miss that. But the new guys, Xi and Li, at least they rhyme. Who are these guys and why are they so important? And why would I just be getting to them now? Okay, well, I'm just now getting to talking about these two new leaders because I wasn't really sure when they officially took over. And what I mean by that is China's, of course, not a democracy. It's a one-party state, and so the Communist Party is the one party. And ain't nobody party like a Communist Party, but they just get together once every 5 years and decide who the next leadership was going to be. They did that back in November. So it had already been decided that Xi and Li would be the two top guys. But then, unlike a democracy where you have an official handover of power and an inauguration and parades and crap, they don't do that in China. So it's been months since November of a slow transition process. Moving the old people out, but, not just who and when, but, probably their staffings and probably turnover of cabinet members and diplomats. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes of the Chinese government. Nobody does. It's kind of secretive. But it's in a slow, gradual transition period, which, kind of makes sense. Doesn't it make sense that, you should have a country whose leaders are leading such a complex state with a big military and all these other current events and foreign affairs happening, that maybe the old crew would stay around for a while to train the new crew? I wonder why we don't do that in America. We're just like, inauguration day, it's all yours. Good luck, figure it out. Anyway, this transition period takes months, and I didn't know exactly when it officially was going to happen. I thought it was going to be summer, is what they were reporting on for a while, that the official thing would be in summer, but it happened actually March 17th. So it actually happened a few weeks ago that these guys who are already the elected head of the Communist Party and then therefore head of the military and then head of the government, that they now are officially, yes, we are here, we are the guy you salute. And on March 17th, this became point of fact publicly when they did a nationally televised address. Not just, of course, to their country, but the whole world watched it, or if you were into it. And Xi did his speech, and Li did his speech, and it's official. But that's why I wanted to take a second to be like, hey, let's take a look at these two dudes. What can we glean from their presentations and their takeover of China, the biggest superpower after the United States? What can we glean about their future policies and their leadership styles and everything they're going to do for China in the coming decade, which affects the world? And the answer is, who knows? They've only been on the job for a couple weeks, and even though, on day one when they did their speech, they do what all politicians do, which is promise everything, and we'll see if they deliver. No, Chinese politicians, especially ones that make it to the top ranks, they're pretty conservative folks. I don't mean that in a good or bad way. They're pretty conservative. You don't expect Chinese politicians to come out saying, I'm going to change this. We're going forward in this direction. No. The people that make the premier and presidential positions in China are people that are the best at keeping the balance, at slow movement forward. Keep the economy growing. Keep social stability as stable as possible. Really all about stability. So you may have, the smartest, most genius person ever in China who says, hey, I have these great ideas and I'm the smartest person ever. And everybody could agree. And I'm like, I'm going to go do this and move the country forward very rapidly. They would never become president because people think, no. That's not priority one. Priority one is balance. Balance, baby. So you can always expect Chinese leaders, especially in speeches they give, to be pretty chill, pretty moderate. We want to do this. We'd like to do that. Having said that, their speeches were predictable, as most politicians' speeches are. But they did take on tones that have not been previously touched upon as things they want to focus on. So it was worthy of a quick chat here. Xi Jinping, for his part, has said he wants to make corruption, getting rid of corruption, a major focus of his leadership. Fantastic, because China is ripe with corruption. What country ain't? But the Chinese leadership has figured out very quickly from their predecessors that, if you allow a country to become too corrupt and too many people at the top, especially in the government, that are driving around in limousines and they become millionaires and their friends and their friends' families get all these perks and end up getting licenses to run the million-dollar businesses in their country. If you allow too much of that, that creates great social instability and sometimes revolution. So Xi on day one has come out saying, corruption, baby. We're going to tackle it. We're going to end it. And it goes deeper than simply graft. It goes deeper than just I'm stealing out of the till or giving government contracts to my friends. Corruption in China also would include things like, hey, we need to tighten up laws at the local, state, and federal levels about environmental policy, about who gets social benefits. We need to reconfigure the system so that we start to think about wealth disparity. We got a lot of people getting rich in China, but we got a lot of people that are poor. What are we going to do about that? How are we going to combat wealth disparity in the most equitable way possible while still allowing for capitalist-style growth and freedom of expression and or economic business expression? Pardon me. I don't mean to suggest they're given freedom of expression. But all these things, if you think about it, are avenues of corruption. Things aren't equal. Things aren't right. Things aren't fair. And they're going to really tackle that at the government level is what they're saying they're going to do. Okay? On other issues, of course, we don't know. We don't know about his foreign policy till he starts doing things. But most people think that Xi's going to be, again, stability is number one, and that he's probably going to work very hard here in his opening months in office to chill everybody out. There's every indication that he will, because it's in China's best interest. And quite frankly, Xi's taken over in a pretty volatile time. Who and when had a good decade run where there was no major anything going on foreign policy-wise that the Chinese were involved in. I mean, the U.S. has been involved in 10 million wars and stuff, but the Chinese ain't. But they have had some border friction, some friction with Japan, but really not that much. Here on day one, Xi's dealing with a North Korea that may explode and start a world war, which would pull China in. You're looking at multiple territorial conflagrations with Japan, which can get hot again at any given time, and they were hot just last year. You also have China in a situation not only having territorial disputes with Japan, but territorial disputes with most of its Southeast Asian neighbors. And some of those are getting hotter. So he takes over at a time of, quite frankly, great volatility. Just with Chinese foreign policy in the local vicinity. We're not even talking about global stuff. So he's going to have to pony up quick. And it seems like he has. He's already met with one of the higher-ups in the Japanese government. He, again, came out on day one, speech one, saying, we want economic prosperity for us and our region. And we are going to implement what every Chinese politician swears by, which is peaceful rise. Peaceful rise. Yes, we're a rising giant. Yes, we'll be the biggest economy in the world. Yes, we are the biggest population in the world. China want no war. China don't want no war with their neighbors. China don't want stability. Peaceful rise, that's their mantra. And for his part, Xi Jinping said, yeah, I'm on board for that, because we want our citizens to get richer and happier, not get involved in a war that's not going to help anybody. On that note, though, last thing I'll say about Xi is that he actually did, just a couple days ago, come out and kind of throw a barb at North Korea's way. And said something to the effect of, when, of course, people are asking him, hey, what's going to go on with North Korea? And he said, well, no comment, basically. But I don't think any country should be allowed to throw an entire region or the entire world into chaos for their own selfish gains. End of partial quote. That can only be North Korea. So he's in, again, a new phase of the Chinese government and leading it in a very new way. It does look like China's starting to distance themselves from North Korea, as predictable. And that they may not be happy with what's going on in North Korea. Totally, everybody knows that now. And that they might not come save the day if North Korea gets involved in too much more shenanigans. And that indeed, I think they're probably working behind the scenes with the United States and others already to figure out a best case scenario of ending the nonsense in North Korea. That would be awesome. You know, I always look at the positive side of things, and it could easily be that this whole chaos in North Korea could turn completely positive. And actually build a stronger relationship between the U.S. and China, which is China sees what's going on. Xi sees what's going on. He knows the U.S. has got to do what the U.S. has got to do to protect South Korea. And so he doesn't want to attack the United States. I mean, verbally, certainly not militarily. And so I think what you're going to see is them working behind the scenes saying, hey, let's get Kim Jong-un in a room and put the heat on him and strengthen our relationship and solve this crisis. It could very well spin into something positive. But I'll leave Xi for now and just say a few words about Li Keqiang. He also did a speech on March 17th, and he's the new premier. Kind of like a vice president, but not really. Kind of like more like a secretary of state or head diplomat, or I don't know. I've always been intrigued by the premier position in China. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But they're a big spokesman. They're a big figure out there. He took over for Wen Jiabao, a grandfatherly older figure who was generally beloved by the population, and who would pepper his speeches with ancient or historical Chinese quotes. And everybody loved Uncle Wen. He's like that nice uncle. And he would always be on the spot shaking hands and kissing babies and, you know, helping out in times of emergency or, you know, natural disaster. So he leaves a pretty good legacy, but his legacy's getting a little bit tarnished right this second because a lot of his family members suddenly got really rich in the last 10 years, and so there are now possible corruption charges happening towards his family, not necessarily linked back directly to him. In that note, though, when Li did his speech, when Premier Li did his speech, he kind of threw a barb that way too and said, oh, by the way, I am also all about ending corruption in the Chinese government, specifically the government. I think we should all lead by example. Hint, hint, Wen Jiabao. I will be straightforward. I will lead by example. I don't want any government perks. We want to eliminate government perks. We don't want this upper class of politicians driving around in black limos and have pensions for life. We want to focus on any corruption, but also restructuring our society a tad, not full restructuring, but to focus more on the common man, to protect the growing middle class. And that growing middle class is going to be of crucial significance in the 21st century world, not just China. Li says we should refocus our economy to be a consumption economy so that we produce products that 1.5 of our citizens buy, not just export. And we also want to make sure that their standards of living get better. So yeah, we got a lot of people get rich in China, and we have a growing middle class, but it's still pretty small. We want to grow the middle class and provide them a quality of life, not just money. Quality of life means you have air you can breathe, that you don't have environmental degradation and pollution, that you have a place that you're proud of, that you have not as much wealth disparity. We're back to wealth disparity again. So this guy's, he's a man of the people too, younger than Wen was, a little more agile, a little more crafty, and a little more adamant about, no, this is what we need to do. We need to grow our middle class, grow our society, and do it right. Because, you know, what the hell good is having a bunch of money in China, as our GDP may be the biggest in the world, but if you can't breathe the damn air in Beijing, what the hell is your money worth? If you can't drink the water in your backyard, what's your money worth? We want to build our society from the inside out to be a higher quality of life for our growing middle class, not just focus on getting a ton of money, which is again why he's suggesting focusing on a consumption society, which it's fraught with its materialistic dangers as well, but I understand what he's saying. Instead of the government focusing on exports at all costs, making money at all costs, he's saying, well, why don't we grow our economy where people buy the products that we produce? You're likely to see that happen. You're likely to see that shift. Let me end with this. Why did I wait 3 weeks to talk about the new Chinese leadership? Because I just got reminded of it because of a big conference that just ended, the April 6th to 8th. And it's a forum, I guess, an international forum. Just finished up on Hainan Island. It's that island down south of the Chinese mainland of China proper. And the town's name is Boao, I think. Boao. And it's the Boao Forum for Asia. Boao is the name of the little city on the, I believe, the eastern coast of Hainan Island. And the forum is actually pretty much an Asian alternative to the Davos Summit. You ever heard of the Davos Summit? You can go Google Davos or Google BOA, B-O-A-O. And what these things are it's not governments, it wasn't ASEAN, it's not countries. It is an open forum of the rich and famous, of business people, entrepreneurs, and some heads of state and political pundits and people like that coming together to exchange ideas and make ties and stuff like that. Chinese leadership was down there. China hosted it, for one. You usually hear about Davos because a whole bunch of heads of states or former heads of states and billionaires and millionaires and business heads go to Davos. And now we got one in China. It's been around for a little while, but this is kind of the big first time it's been like, whoa, this is international news. Why? Because Xi Jinping was there. So was Bill Gates, who gave the keynotes. So was Christine Lagarde, head of the International Monetary Fund. So was Julia Gillard, Prime Minister of Australia. So was John Key, Prime Minister of New Zealand. So was probably a whole bunch of other heads of state from Asia. An Asian summit on exchange of ideas and business and all this other stuff. Fantastic. And people were lined up as far as the eye could see to kiss the ass of Xi. This was kind of a meet and greet for the first time between Xi and a whole bunch of these other Asian leaders. And you know they're getting on board and kissing it up, baby, because this guy and Xi and Li, will likely be in power in China for the next decade. China will be probably the largest economy in the next decade. There's tremendous amounts of growth to be had and product to be sold from and to China in the next decade. So all these leaders want to cozy up and start, talking the talk and walking the walk with the brand new leaders of China, President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang. Never probably pronounce it right, but I do my best. Well, that's all for now. Now we got 2 leaders to know. Bye-bye who, bye-bye when. We knew when to say when and who was who, but now we know the dynamic dragon duo of Li and Xi.